I want to talk today about awakening to the wonder of who you are. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." And of course, as we begin to consider this question of who we are and awakening to who we are, it's important to understand why we are even talking about this. Does it make a difference in your life? Is it of any value to you? I mean, anytime you're listening to something, anytime you're spending time and devoting time to hear something, you want to first of all know it's worth your time and effort to actually listen to it. So let me just start by explaining why I believe that this is so essential for you to hear today. You see, your self image, who you believe yourself to be, determines what you do in life and also how you experience life. When I say experience life, I'm talking about emotions and the feelings that you have. You may lay on a beach in the most beautiful place in the world and still be miserable. So your self perception, the way you perceive yourself, actually determines not just what you do, but also determines how you experience it, how you feel about it. Your your beliefs, in other words, we live out who we believe ourselves to be. We have this image, a portrait, basically thoughts or images in our minds of who we are. We have these images in our head about who we are, and essentially that which we see ourselves doing, that we do. So if you see yourself as poor, broken, and destitute, well, you act out that. If you see yourself as being a talented soccer player, you act out that. We do what we believe ourselves to be. Now, it's interesting because this is more than just some conscious thought that we may have about ourselves. It's much deeper than that. In fact, when you study someone like Solomon in the book of wisdom or the book of Proverbs, one of the Jewish legends, that he was considered the wisest man in the world by the Jewish tradition back in the day. And he made some interesting statements. He said, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Now, take note here that the word man is not supposed to mean man and versus female. It's male and female is inclusive in this word here, man. That's how people used to speak. And so we understand that. So as a human being thinks, so is he. Now, it's important to acknowledge here from the beginning, it's not who you are truly, is not what we're talking about, that which we are going to awaken to, but it is how we perceive ourselves, who we believe ourselves to be. Now, your heart is different from your conscious mind. From your mind, your heart have different interpretations of who you are. For example, I may say that I'm a pilot, but I've never flown, and it could just be a thought in my head, but that's not who I believe myself to be deeply subconsciously. So when it talks about the heart, it's referring to your subconscious. In other words, there's a lot of stuff that has happened in your life and it's been scrambled together and has formed into an image in your subconscious that you now that guides and controls your life and guides and controls what you do. So it's another interesting to read some of these ancient texts about what the heart represented. One author says the heart is deceitful above all else and desperately wicked. Who can understand it? Now, you got to read this from the original text to get a better understanding of it. The heart is deceitful above all else is actually just two words, heart and deceitful above all else. And the word deceitful above all else in the original text means footprints or foot trackings. So notice here, what really is being said here is that your heart or your subconscious, your inner sense of self, who you believe yourself to be, all the things that have been scrambled together inside your subconscious, your sense of identity, is deceitful above all else, or has footprints, or has foot trackings, or has been trampled upon by an outside force, by other people. Now, we're not here to blame other people. We're not here to vilify some person who has done us wrong. That's not what this is about, because this is something that we've been passing on and we continue to pass on unless we awaken. We will continue to awaken. Unless we awaken to truly who we are, we're going to continue to pass this on from one generation to the next. We trample upon others. We trample upon others' identity, who they are, and especially children. And that's why it's so important for us to awaken. But we see this, that we all have been trampled upon to some extent. Maybe words were spoken against us, maybe negative words, maybe, some people have gone through abuse. Some people have gone through all kinds of traumatic experience that shaped us, that somehow or another were formed inside our subconscious, and we then have a picture of who we are, and we live out who we believe ourselves to be. And then it says, it's desperately wicked. Now, the word wicked here simply means sick. It's sick or weak or frail. So your sense of self, who you believe yourself to be, is frail, it's insecure, it is fearful, it is wondering, am I enough? Am I good enough the way I am? And then there's another thought that the author Solomon brings up when he says, the heart, it basically says, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it flows everything that you do. We already made reference to that, but everything you do comes from your subconscious. Now, scientists are telling us that 99% of everything that you do stems from your unconscious. And in fact, I've even seen how if I would ask you a question, and even before you give the answer, even before you have the thought in your head what your answer would be, your subconscious, a very small split of a second, has already determined what you will do. So what I'm saying is we are basically driven by our unconscious mind, or our subconscious, that controls and guides our life. And that's why we need to awaken to who we are. Let me just give you a few examples of what I'm talking about so that this will make more sense to you. You know, I've had the opportunity to work with children, specifically in very impoverished areas in Africa. And I noticed when I began to go to some of these villages in impoverished areas, not so much among the children, but among the older people who have a very established picture of who they are, that I could tell them about, you can make a difference, you can change the world you're living in, you can make a lot of different things differently here. And you know, the saying is, if you give someone a fish, you teach them for a day. If you teach them how to fish, you feed them for life. And I realized that that was not necessarily true, especially among some of the most impoverished people, because even though we could offer teachings that would help them, many of them would not accept that teaching, or just dismiss this as something, you know, it's not for me, I'm not good enough. In other words, they had an inferior view of themselves, that they thought, I am not qualified. Even if I studied, it wouldn't make a difference to me. Why is that? Because their subconscious, the heart, is, to use the word, has all these foot trappings or foot steps on them and trackings on them, that their sense of identity, their sense of self will not even allow them to pursue education, or allow themselves to think that, yeah, I can create a better life for my family and for my community. They don't even want to think like that. Not everybody, but I've noticed that among certain people in impoverished areas. And then you think about, you know, there are statistics now that indicate that someone who wins the lottery, wins millions of dollars on the lottery, and especially if they had nothing, that within 2.5 years, 90% of them have actually squandered all the money. Why? Because their inner self-perception, who they believe themselves to be, is poor. And for that particular reason, when they have money, they simply they do not know what to do with it, and they just release it without the right self-perception. So these are reasons why it's so important to awaken to our true self, because we are guided by this inner image. You are guided by an inner image of who you believe yourself to be that dictates everything in your life. And I know even from personal experience, I remember when I was a child living in Sweden, and um, we were, I went to school, and there was a teacher there who basically said to all of us, "I'm going to test your ability to read." Now, I was attending a school, a class where you had a lot of people who were very academically gifted. And so they were testing all of our reading. And he said, I want you to open a book, and maybe it was 255, whatever, page 255. And I want you to read a line in that book, and I'm going to see how many times you move your eyes as you read that. And so she started in the other end of the classroom, and the average was 2, and she told us the average is 2. Most people scored 2. They would move their eyes twice. Some people can do it once, and a few people may do it a little more than that. So almost everyone scored 2, and there are a couple of people who scored 1 time. They only moved their eyes once. And then they came to someone who was considered by many a little bit slow-witted. And so he also only moved it twice. So he did very well. And then they came to me. And I was kind of terrified that someone other would mess this up. So I looked at that one line, and I moved my eyes. And I didn't know how many times I moved my eyes. I didn't even really read the line because we didn't have to read it out loud. And so I read the line, and then the teacher said, "You moved your eyes 3 times." I didn't believe her. I told her that, and still don't really believe her even to this day, but that's besides the point. Maybe she was right. And so I did it again. She said, "No, you scored 3 times." Now you have to understand how I interpreted this in my young mind. I thought somehow or another I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. I'm not as smart as the other kids. I do not know how to read like the other kids. I'm not as qualified. Maybe I shouldn't be in this class. Maybe I shouldn't take this course. Maybe this is not for me. That was my thinking. That's how I perceived the thing. And of course, I forgot about the incident. But strangely enough, when I later on observed my life, I noticed that many of the things basically in my school years were affected by that. So I noticed that I lost interest in studying, and my grades began to deteriorate because of it. And then even when I went to college, and I was doing quite well in college, I still had this image of myself that I was not as smart as the other kids. Never consciously thought like that, but the image within me that was lurking behind the surface was this: that don't waste your time studying. Don't waste your time on stuff that you're not good at. Even though I was good, which is kind of a strange oxymoron, I did quite well. I certainly wasn't, I'm not suggesting that I did the best of anybody, but I did quite well. But I still had this inner turmoil. And later on in life, and I began to pursue my career, even when I had success, I struggled because I felt like my inner sense of self had a picture that I was not successful, that I wasn't deserving enough, I was somehow or another a fraud, that the success didn't really fit who I was because I had this image of myself that I was not enough. And that created almost a depression because there was an incongruity between what my conscious mind saw through my success and how I perceived myself in my subconscious. So there was an incongruity between the two. And because they were not harmonized, it caused depression. It caused me to feel like a failure. That caused me to have all these negative emotions that impacted my life in a negative way. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that who you believe yourself to be. Who you believe yourself to be at your very core is essential for the way you live and the way you experience life, whether it's emotionally, spiritually, mentally, or just the things that you do in life. It's controlled by your subconscious, by your unconscious mind. So when Jesus makes this statement, you are the light of the world, he makes it broadly to everybody. He didn't say just there were certain groups of people. If you study the context, you'll learn that Jesus said it to people who came from various religious backgrounds, from various political backgrounds, from various nationalities. Jesus spoke very inclusively, and he said, you are the light of the world. Now, the words you are, of course, are speaking about our true identity, right? So he says, you are, this is who you are. You are the light of the world. Now, it's kind of strange to think of yourself as light. I mean, most people don't go around saying, hey, listen, I am light. I am I am Mr. Light, or I'm Mrs. Light. I mean, if you go for a job interview, I would not recommend that you call yourself, well, tell me about yourself. I am light. That's not something that you say, right? Or even if you're just hanging out with some friends, if you say, I am light, people will think you're slightly crazy, you lost it. So I don't recommend that you call yourself light, but still, Jesus says that you are the light of the world. And many of us actually think that Jesus must have something going for him. I mean, he's the most famous person in history. And whatever you think of Jesus, whatever your worldview is, I mean, that's the starting point, that he is the most famous person in history. And he must have done something to reach that point, right? And I'm not getting into the religious spectrum of this, because that's not my role. I like to speak to everybody. So whatever you think about Jesus, it's up to you. I'm not here to say that you have to believe or for or against, and that may irritate people who believe in him, but that's okay. I'm not here trying to convince you or change anybody's mind. I'm just saying to you that Jesus, obviously, when he said this, he was referring to something that is incredibly important for us. So what is light? Well, light is not so much something that you see. Now, you could obviously look toward the sun, but you would quickly be blinded by the sun. But light is that by which you see everything. In other words, without the light, you won't be able to perceive reality. There will be nothing to see. Without the light, there will be no creation, there will be no form, there will be no visible matter. Light is what turns the formless into form. And so light is essential. And so light is that by which we see everything. So if I go a little deeper and then begin to look at who you are, what does that mean? Well, we're not like a bright light shining. It's not like a bright light shining through our forehead saying, I am light, I'm light, I'm light. No, but how do you perceive, and how are you able to see and perceive and observe reality? Well, it's very simple, really. It's your consciousness. And when I say consciousness, I'm talking about this presence. I'm talking about presence within you, the aliveness of who you are. You have the ability to experience life and observe reality. There's, if you go to a funeral and you see a person that have known and you have loved all your life, and they lay in the casket, what you see is a body, but you realize their spirit has parted, or their consciousness is no longer there. Consciousness and spirit, by the way, is the same thing. So this is so important to get this. Jesus is saying that you are the light of the world. He's saying that your consciousness is your true self, your truest and deepest self. Now, Jesus also referred to himself as the light of the world. And then we read some of the followers of Jesus said that God is light. And I have taught about this in the past, but when you study quantum physics, for example, you discover very quickly that many scientists and physicists actually believe that there is a cosmic consciousness that undergirds all reality. Without a cosmic consciousness, there would not, that everything will be formless. Now, they have proof of that, and it makes sense. Everything starts with consciousness. Without consciousness, there cannot be any form. And so many scientists are coming to this conclusion that's the fabric of the universe, that the core essence of the universe. And we see this even in spiritual texts where it talks about spirit. God breathed into the nostrils of man. Metaphorically, we read this: God breathed into the nostrils of man the breath of life. Now, what was this? He breathed the breath of life. It's spirit. Another word for it is spirit. Another word for it is consciousness. We became conscious. We became aware that there is this aliveness about us. It's who you are at the very core. Now, of course, there's all these add-ons. There's all these other things that have been added on to you that have shaped who you are. But if we go and look, if you look at your life and you go back, go through everything in your life to the very beginning, what is the one thing that has been consistent throughout? I would suggest to you, your thoughts have not been consistent. And most of us identify with our thoughts, but you have 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. It's not your thoughts that has been consistent. It's not the roles you play, because we all have roles, right? Like I'm a father, I'm a husband, I have all these titles, I have these different things that I've done. Those are roles. I have my nationalities, my citizenships, all of those are roles that I play. My name, my first name, my last name, those are roles that I play. We all play roles. We all have a sense, but it's been given from the outside. It's like foot trackings, footprints. Someone has trampled upon our identity and defined us a certain way, has created limits about who we are. So we see this throughout the world. And you say, well, what's wrong with that? It's all good. It's nothing wrong with it in itself. But Jesus said that's not truly who you are. That's not the core essence of who you are. And I would suggest to you that all those things, however important they are, as long as we define ourselves by all these external labels that people have put on us, male, female, white, black, American, European, Asian, Christian, Muslim, Jew, all those are labels that someone has bestowed upon us. Doctor, physician, plumber, whatever it is, retired, all those are labels that someone has bestowed upon us, are all roles that we play. They have been programmed into our subconscious. We act out who we believe ourselves to be. And those are the roles that we take in upon ourselves. In fact, I would suggest to you, that has not been consistent. The roles have changed. You have one role when you were a child, you have a different role when you were a teenager, and then you're a different role when you were 20, and then you have taken on different roles. It's been add-ons throughout your life. In other words, there has been more foot trackings. Someone else has said, this is who you are, not both on the surface level, but also subconsciously. All these things have been added on to you that has formed an inner sense of picture of who you are. And then we also easily allow our bodies to be defined by our bodies. We look a certain way, right? All of us look a certain way, but that has not been consistent either. Think about it. What you looked like 10 years ago, you don't look like today. At least I don't. I mean, maybe you do, but I don't. I have changed a lot now. There are patterns there, but at the same time, most of it's changed. But let me go back like 50 years ago, and I can, when I was not even born yet. That's not true, but you know what I'm saying. If you go back a long time ago, since I was a child, you will notice that I look nothing like I did when I was a child. Like, my parents probably thought I was a cute baby and you were a cute baby. Maybe not. We don't know if we were cute babies or not, but we look nothing like we do today. Some of us had these ugly duckling years in our life where we didn't look that good, and suddenly we start looking better. And some people look really good when they were young, and no, not quite so much anymore. So, but we identify with our bodies. Our thoughts sometimes would identify with our bodies. The reality is that we all change. In fact, they, even from a quantum level, they say that, your skin, for example, sheds every 30 days. So 30 days. So you don't have the same skin that you did 30 days ago. All you have, 75 trillion cells, but billions of them die every day. And then new cells are born every day. Now, there's a pattern to it. There's a pattern to all of this. But where does that pattern come from? Here is what I'm saying to you is this. What I'm saying to you is this, that all of those are things that change, but consciousness, your sense of aliveness have been there since you were a child. You are aware that you are. That has been there, this aliveness, this presence has been there since the beginning, since the day you were born. Now, why is this important? Because so much of what we do and how we act is we are controlled by this inner voices of who we are. We are here, in fact, most of us, and this is kind of another interesting thing, most of us have these inner voices that also change all the time. Think about it. One day you think of yourself as a hero. You think you really are good. You did something amazing. And some days we do things amazing, and then we feel really good about ourselves and we're ready to tell the world. And then 3 weeks later, we feel horrible about ourselves. Someone maybe said something negative about us, or maybe we woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and something happened. Or maybe we lost a job, or maybe someone rejected us. So we feel horrible about ourselves, and we look at ourselves in the mirror, the same mirror that we looked at ourselves 3 weeks earlier, and we said, "Hey, man, I'm great, I'm wonderful." And 3 weeks later, we feel horrible about ourselves. So we have these voices in our head. In other words, thoughts in our head, images in our head that continue to change. And then we want to blame somebody when we're feeling really down and out. We need to have a villain in our life, someone that is responsible for the mess that we're in. So all of that is always changing, but that's not consciousness. Consciousness is just pure, unfiltered awareness, where you are no longer governed, or your thoughts in some ways have ceased, even if it's for just a moment. So when you begin to create space, if we would do this right now as an exercise, if we would just sit back and just become conscious without a thought, if you did that for long enough, you will notice that your whole mental and emotional being would change. It will create almost like a well-being in your life, because it's freeing yourself from the egoic mind that is identifying with all these external, with these footprints, with all these different things that are taking place in our life. All those things are fleeting, but that which lasts forever is the fact that you are consciousness, and your consciousness, hear me, this is so important. Your consciousness is one with the cosmic consciousness, the ground of being, the source of life, God. It's one with God. In fact, put it this way, uh, you know, you are like a drop in the ocean. All of the ocean is in you, and all of you is in the ocean. All of God is in you, and all of you are in God. In other words, think about it this way. Your consciousness is that gift, the DNA from God. And so it's your spirit. And when your spirit has removed all the garbage and everything else, then you're full of the Spirit. You are full of the Spirit. In other words, there is complete peace. There is a sense of love and joy and kindness and happiness, a sense of oneness with one another. As Jesus said, I'm in the Father is in me. You are in me, I'm in you. I'm in the naked. I'm in the stranger. I'm in the prisoner. I'm in the immigrant. You begin to see yourself in the whole. You recognize I am part of everything. My true essence, my consciousness is united with everything. And when you begin to awaken to that part within you, it changes your life. It changes how you interact with other people, how you see other people. That's why, one of the writers of the followers of Jesus said, Christ is all and in all. And we see other spiritual texts say the same thing. When you awaken, when you come to that place of being aware of who you are at the very core, you awaken to this reality of who you are. You are one with the source of life. Your true essence, the eternal aspect of you is spirit. And the moment that you move past all the egoic thinking and all those thoughts, and you just become aware of this infinite presence within you, you are full of the Spirit. And the more time you spend in that presence, the more your thoughts align with that image. Your heart becomes transformed. There's a transformation of the heart. So now you no longer see yourself based on all this external programming, all the footprints, all the foot trackings. You no longer see yourself based on that. Your sense of self is based on that you are the light of the world. A light that permeates with love, a light that permeates with grace. So how can we awaken? How can we awaken to this true essence of who we are? I like something that in the book of Psalms, David the psalmist, he said, meditate within your heart and on your bed and be still. The word meditate means to commune. Commune with your heart. Commune with that unconscious sense of self, who you believe yourself to be. Commune, meditate. In other words, get to that point of stillness where you allow your true essence, your consciousness, that which is eternal, to begin to reprogram, repaint the canvas of your heart with a new image. That's for me why I tell people I'm not really religious. I am not believing the same way I used to do. I don't see the world the same way as I used to do, but I still like Jesus. I'm a follower of Jesus, because to be a follower of Jesus to me is to awaken to your spirit, awaken to come alive to that pure, you could call it the Holy Spirit, you could call it whatever you want, that permeates with love and grace and peace. And the more you're aware of that, the more there is a transformation, and it happens in stillness. You got to be still for it. You got to come to that point where you're just aware. I could go outside some days and just look at a tree and become aware. Become aware of this essence, like energy. It's like an energy. You begin to feel your own energy in your body. When I meditate, and I do it daily, I feel and experience this presence. I become so aware of this energy that is within me. And that's ultimately all of us. We are energy. I become aware, and I become so alive, and I let go of these thoughts. And when the thoughts come again and try to, the subconscious feelings that we have, and we can even control the voices in our head half the time, all the different things we hear and say, and they just happen. They come to us, and they all come from our subconscious in some ways. But when I come to that point and I just allow myself to be still, when I create that space between thoughts, and I'm completely still, I'm completely aware, and I surround this space between my thoughts with grace and with love and with peace. And you can read more about this in my book, but when that happens, there is just this transformation that takes place in my life. My thoughts change. So if I go through a difficult day, or if I go through a hardship, I try to get to that place when I just become aware. Let go of all thoughts, just create that space, surround the space with love, grace, and peace. And for me, I follow the Jesus tradition. I do it through those spiritual texts. And I just surround myself with that. And then I come to that point where I create that space between thoughts, and I'm just aware. I'm not asleep. I'm just aware. My mind is not firing on 100 cylinders, whatever. It's just at peace, at rest. I'm just aware. I could look out. I could stare out my backyard. I can look at the mountains. I can see the surroundings, and I'm just aware. Look at my palm trees. I love to look at my palm trees, maybe because I was raised in a cold climate, so palm trees to me are very special. I look at my palm trees in my backyard, and I'm just aware. And as I'm aware of it, there is this peace. I feel this transcending infinite presence, God. I sense the presence of God, and there's wholeness about that. There's well-being about that. There's freedom from fear, from toxic emotions, and all of that. I'm awakening to who I am. And when people do this, they awaken to who they are at the very core as the light of the world. I tell the story. You may have heard me say this before, and I conclude with this story about an eaglet who had fallen out of his nest. An injured bird had fallen out of his nest. One day the farmer came by and found this eaglet, injured eaglet, picked it up, felt sorry for it, and brought it home and left it among the chickens in the barnyard. And a year went by. Of course, the eaglet now started growing up and became healthy again. But it had learned the behaviors and the actions of the chickens. So it walked like the chickens, it clucked like the chickens, and I guess talked like the chickens. And so an environmentalist passed by, and he noticed the eagle among the chickens. So he says to the farmer, "What is this eagle doing among the chickens?" Oh, the farmer said, "The eagle is no longer a eagle, really. It's more like a chicken because it acts like a chicken, it behaves like a chicken. It's not really an eagle anymore, so just leave it alone." He says, no. The environmentalist said, "It's an eagle. Eagles are supposed to soar. They're supposed to fly." And he took the bird and he lifted up in his hands, and he said, "Eagle, eagle, spread your wings and fly away." The eagle looks to its left, to its right, and then it looks down and it sees the other chickens, and it swoops down or hops down and it joins the other chickens and start eating like the chickens, clucking like the chickens, and walking like the chickens. Now, the environmentalist was not ready to give up, so he picks up the bird again, and this time he takes the bird to the rooftop and he says, "Eagle, eagle, spread your wings and fly away." The eagle looks to its left, to its right, and then it looks down and it sees the chickens again, and it swoops down and lands among the chickens and begins once again to walk like the chickens, cluck like the chickens, and eat like the chickens. Environmentalist finally picks up the bird and he says, "We're going to go to the mountaintop far away from these chickens." He got to the mountaintop and he's holding the bird in his hands, and he lifts up the eagle and he says, "Eagle, eagle, eagle, spread your wings and fly. You are not a chicken. Spread your wings and fly." The eagle looks down and searches for the chickens, but he can't see them. He looks to his left, to his right, and then it looks up and it catches a glimpse of the sun peeking through the clouds. And slowly the eagle lifts its wings and then effortlessly soars into the sky. Why? Because the eagle is not a chicken. The eagle is an eagle. In the same way, you are divine consciousness. The divine consciousness, you are the light of the world. Your very true essence permeates with love because your true essence is one with God, is one with the source of life, with the ground of being. And once you begin to awaken to that reality, you will see a transformation in your life like you've never seen before. I want to finish by reading something here, because this story I mentioned in my latest book, Awakening to I Am Love. I want to read just what I wrote there. It's just a short little paragraph. Perhaps you've been conditioned to live as something you are not. Maybe you've been assigned artificial labels of who you are by your family, friends, religion, and culture. The dimension in you that is one with God has been hidden by the clouds of fear, shame, rejection, and guilt. But there is a light within you. As you catch a glimpse of the brightness of divine love, you will find your true self and soar to new heights. So, my friend, wake up to who you are. You're not the sum of your biology, the collection of your thoughts, or a chicken in a farmyard. You are a soaring, majestic spirit, one with the essence of the same energy that permeates the universe, love. My friend, you are the light of the world. And when you awaken to that reality, there is hope for peace in the world. There's hope for our own well-being, being free from fear and feelings of rejection and feelings of turmoil within us. And naturally and effortlessly, we'll begin to identify with otherness. People are different than us. People come from different backgrounds. We begin to see ourselves in them and recognize that we're all one. I'll take this next few moments and I will ask you, if you've been watching this, just to close your eyes for just a few moments and just become aware of your own presence. Become aware of your truest and deepest self. Consciousness. Just close your eyes. Create space between your thoughts, whether it's only for 2 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. The more space you can create between your thoughts, you're just aware. Not sleeping, you're just aware. Bless you, my friend. You are loved.